Okay, trout in lettuce. You need 1 8-inch rainbow trout, either as a whole fish or 2 fillets, matching in size. Then you need some mushrooms, some onion, and some shallot, some parsley, some dry breadcrumbs, and some butter. First of all, you blanch a lettuce leaf by popping it in boiling water, fishing it out, and cooling it off. You cut out the big seam of the romaine lettuce, the spine, without going through the lettuce, just cutting out the spine. So you've got 1 intact sheet of lettuce leaf that has been parboiled so that it's soft. Put that aside. Take each of your fillets of trout and lightly saute them in butter in a skillet. Once they're just beginning to take a bit of color, put them aside. Lift them out and pop them on a plate. Now, in the pan, before you clean it, add another knob of butter and add some onion finely diced, a little bit of garlic finely diced, and your herb finely diced. Saute that together until the onion becomes transparent and you don't have that raw onion and garlic smell. Add the dry breadcrumbs to mop up the pan juices. So you're going to end up with a mushroom and breadcrumb paste. Put that aside. Then in the same pan, add a bit of white wine. Add a few strands of saffron or a bit of yellow food coloring. Add the butter and simmer that with the wine until it reduces. Add a tablespoon of 18% cream for the sauce. But before that, you need to plate up the trout. So you put the trout on a plate, you put the layer of mushroom filling in between the 2 slices of fried fillets of trout, wrap the whole packet in a lettuce leaf, tucking it in underneath. Then you put that on a plate, a clean serving plate. In the pan, you reduce the cream and the wine and the butter until you get a nice, consistent, smooth sauce. This you will use to cover the trout once you have reheated it. Add your chosen vegetables to a plate with the trout. I recommend new boiled potatoes, green beans, and carrots, cooked to perfection and plated next to your trout packet. Put the whole lot in the microwave for 1.5 minutes to heat up everything on the plate. Obviously, everything is pre-cooked, so all you're doing is bringing it back to temperature. Once that is hot and steamy, you get your frying pan going again, and you warm it up, and you pour the sauce, the yellow sauce, over the green lettuce, which is snuggled up next to the new potatoes, the carrots, and the green beans. And voila, bon appetit. That is the trout in lettuce packets.
mighty man is he, with large and sinewy hands, and the muscles on his brawny arms are strong as iron bands. Hey, it's me, Ellen from the bushes, on the rail trail. My first rollerblade hike of the year. So I'm on my way back to my destination of 10 miles. And I'm reciting poetry because it's just so pretty out here. Birds. I hear them. I see cardinals, woodpeckers, lots of ducks, typical crows and things like that. But today's topic this week is about recipes. And I hate to cook. I cook a lot, but I wanted to talk a little bit about different kind of recipes. So I'm moving along in life trying to figure out what it is that I need to do to balance all the many obligatory duties that moms have, with Mother's Day coming up and my kids saying, what do you want us to do for you? I'm like, I don't know. Time for me. So I come up with this recipe. And the way that I came up with it is on this rollerblade escapade. I saw this swamp. It was pretty murky. The water was muddy. There was a lot of dead tree debris. And I was just kind of assessing what survived the winter and what didn't. And all of a sudden, in the middle of this pretty dark and gruesome pond was this huge sprout of these beautiful green budding, they almost look like daffodils or not morning glory, but something like that, tiger lilies. And I thought, there you go. Even in your darkest hours, there's growth. So that was my first ingredient for my recipe of life. The second is that the lake is like glass, and there's a lot of shadows. But the silhouette of the lake is all kind of brown because there's no growth on the trees yet. We went from winter to summer, so spring's trying to make its appearance. So it's a shadow, but it's kind of brown and dull. And all of a sudden, I see this red, white farmhouse, and it pops. Oh, there's a red-winged blackbird. Pretty. And I thought, yeah, that's kind of typical too. We're all kind of just people. We're all walking each other home, let's face it. And yet, sometimes, one of us just shines, whether it's a moment in time, whether it's an event, sometimes it's a decade. But there's always a moment to shine. And I want to try to find my moment. I know it ain't going to be running, but I've had moments to shine. I can't deny that, but it's part of the ingredients. Figure out who you are and how you want to shine, and shine your light. The next thing is slow. I'm doing a 10-minute mile on rollerblades. I usually do about a 6, but today's my first day out, and I really just enjoying nature and the peace and quiet. So I need to slow down. I think that's another ingredient. Stop getting crazy about numbers and start just stopping to look. There's so much watching the lake, the reflections that I usually go by it and I never really notice, like, there's another version of life, upside down, reflected, and that's kind of cool. So I need to slow down and really look around. So I've got some goals and some ingredients for reaching those goals, and well, I thought that'd be a good recipe that I could share with you. So have a great day, enjoy your life, look for color, look for a different perspective, and as always, there's growth in the darkness. Now we were going to talk about
my favourite recipe. And actually, well, I was thinking how could I approach this, because I'm not a chefy person. I have quite simple tastes. I like home cooking, and for many years I've cooked my own food from scratch. I rarely ever have any of those processed meals. I know my name's Cook. I must have had somebody of that profession in the past. But I don't think I have any special talent for it whatsoever. So today I cooked what is probably my favourite dish for many decades, in fact, a chicken stew. And I'm not going to insult you by listing out the ingredients for a chicken stew. I'm sure you're very well aware of that and the preparation. So I guess I just have to talk about the history and the context a bit. Anyway, what I'll do, I'll take that chicken stew and we'll serve it dressed with olive oil and lemon. Anyone who knows Greek cooking will know that that's a typical dressing. I used to live in Greece when I was in my 20s for a few years. I do love Greece so much. I try to go there as often as I can. I booked up again to go later this year. So I think one of the origins of my preference for simple cooking was derived from there, where I didn't have much money and I had to live quite simply, get vegetables off of the local market and prepare them. One of the people I met there was Spiros, and he grew up in Crete, and he used to cook this food, and one of the things he cooked very regularly was this chicken with onions, potatoes and carrots and cabbage, and we'd have that and dress it with olive oil and lemon and salt. And so, to be honest, I've really tasted better food, I don't think, in my life. That really hit the spot for me. And so since then, after I came back, and for many years, I'd say that is my favourite dish of all time. So I like home cooked food. I don't really like fancy food, the type that you buy in these fancy restaurants where you have a little bit of food on a plate and you pay an exorbitant amount of money for it. And yeah, you have a poor experience, in my opinion anyway. The most awful meal I ever had was in France, and it was my mother's birthday, and I paid a huge amount of money for this meal. I've never paid anything approaching that in my life at this rather fancy, trendy restaurant, and it was this tiny amount of food on a plate with some sort of foam, you know, the type of thing. It just wasn't very nice. Recommended by my mother's chiropodist, so there must be a joke in there somewhere.
Hello there, this is the Lofty Clan, and we're out doing another training run because little Miss Nola is going to run the Mother's Day race, Community 5K, and so this will be her first, so hopefully we can get her up to speed. And I'm here with Jude.
Hey.
And Aubrey. Say hi, Aubrey.
Hi, Aubrey.
Aubrey's 6. Say hi, Nola.
Hi.
Nola's 8. And everybody knows Jude, right? Say hi, Jude.
Hi.
And the topic of this week is recipes. Favorite recipes. Okay. Are we ready? Oh, look. We're in the cemetery and they're mowing. So you're going to get some lawnmower noise. All right, so let's start out. Let's run. Watch the 6. I'm trying some new Vibrams. And it's like barefoot running. I've had them on for hours. All right, Nola, what's your favorite recipe? What's your favorite thing to make? She wants to do bridge.
Cake.
Cake. What kind of cake? Chocolate cake. That's a good one. Okay, what's your favorite thing to make?
I want to make some cake.
Yeah, what kind of cake?
Round cake like ice cream on it.
Oh, round cake with ice cream.
Oh,
Jude, what's your favorite recipe? Come on, keep running.
Recipe or something to make?
Well, they're kind of one and the same. This is Jude.
I kind of like making cupcakes, but my favorite recipe is like all my keto recipes, and there's so many of them I can't choose which one.
Yeah. Well, what is it? Come on, Aubrey, we gotta do this hill.
Kind of feel like it's the cookies, but then I'm thinking keto or the cloud bread.
Cloud bread. I like that. Jude cooks ketogenic recipes for me. I'm really thinking of putting him on that kind of way of living because it's extremely hyper. Gets him into a lot of difficult situations. And I'm thinking it might help. Anyway, back to recipes. So Nola, how would you make toast?
I will take bread and put in the toaster.
And then what? How do you know when it's done?
When it pops up.
Okay, and what do you put on your toast?
Butter or peanut butter or jam.
Okay. How about you, Aubrey? What do you know how to make?
I'll have a big cake with chocolate with ice cream on it, and I have to make it in the oven for my daddy and mom, and they and me. We're making for Mother's Day.
For Mother's Day. Great. Great. That's really awesome. Okay, so I think
do it again.
I think you got. Yeah, we're gonna run. Let's start running. I think you got the recipe from the mouth of the Cookie Munchers. And let's see, my favorite recipe: pumpkin cheesecake, keto pie, not crust. I love it too much, so I try not to make it. These shoes are, I don't know, jury's still out. Okay. Obs! Aubrey's way back there. We're gonna lose you, girl. Don't lose me. Anything else you guys want to talk about for the last minute?
Take a deep breath in.
Honey, that's not your tummy. That's the side stitch. That means we're running too fast. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Blow out. Good job. All right, so I guess this is your 5 minutes from Look at the Squirrel. From the Loftus Clan in the cemetery of Lenox, Mass, of the Berkshires, on this glorious Wednesday, about 78 degrees out, sunny, after supper, which could be why Aubrey has a side stitch. And we're wishing you all a great Mother's Day and enjoy the weekend. Bye.
Another of my favorite recipes is duck and pear pie. For this you need a duck, but you only use the legs and thighs of the duck. The breast you have previously separated for roasting. Now the other end of the duck, the carcass with the legs, you boil in chicken broth and extract as much flavor as you can into the broth and cook the duck till it's tender and falling off the bone. This takes about, I would say, about an hour and a half of simmering, and then you'll have the cooked trout, not the cooked trout, the cooked duck, to separate out the meat from the bones. Separate the meat from the bones and put aside. In a large skillet, pan fry some reasonably coarsely chopped onion and some green pears, not the sweet kind, a slightly underripe pear is ideal for this. Once you've fried it with the onions and garlic, you'll find that it's quite tender. The cooking process makes it tender. Then you mix the duck meat in with the fried pear and onions, and then you add a sauce that you have made by reducing some of the duck stock and adding a roux and a drop of red wine for color. Once you've done that, you simmer that until it makes a sauce thick enough to fill the skillet with gravy and meat. Toss the meat in that, and then after you've done that, you let it cool off and you pop it into glass or ceramic bowls, a serving of duck and pear mixture, which will be the duck meat off the bone, the fried or sautéed, I should say, onions and pears, seasoned. Everything has to be seasoned. That's what a lot of cooks forget. Food has to be seasoned while you're cooking it. After that, you add the sauce to the skillet. Simmer that for a few seconds until the meat has absorbed some of the gravy. Put aside, let it cool, and then, as I say, add it to your glass or ceramic bowl. Then you cover the top of the pie with basic short crust pastry. I won't have to explain how to make that. Most of you will either know how to, or you'll bake, or you'll buy some ready-made pastry to add to your pie, to put a lid on your pie. That meal is then ready for reheating and baking. So the filling is cooked, the filling is cold, the crust is raw on top of the dish or bowl. You pop it in the oven to brown the pastry and heat through the pie, and then you serve that with rice or potatoes or whatever, pasta if you want. So that is the duck and pear pie. I used to sell this at my restaurant in Montreal. Very popular dish. It also used up the duck legs and created some very nice gravy for me for all my other dishes that I would prepare from the house broth. I would use that broth for my soup, and I would use that sauce for my gravies.
This is Suzanne calling in from Lexington, Kentucky with my 5 minutes on my favorite recipe. I had to set a timer on this one because recipes are sort of one of my favorite things, and I've got a lot of favorites, so this one could take a while. Anyway, the very first thing that I ever remember making from a recipe was a strawberry pie. The middle part, the strawberry filling, was it was cooked and it had unflavored gelatin, and you topped it with whipped cream. And it was a lot better than the Shoney's, which was a big boy chain diner back in the 60s. I was 15 at the time and had never shown any interest whatsoever in being in the kitchen other than to eat. And decided I wanted to make this pie, and my mother decided to encourage me. Now, her idea of teaching was basically to get out a cookbook and say, come ask me if you have any questions. The issue with cookbooks is that they kind of assume from the very beginning that you know how to cook some of these things. You know how to cook. You know what these things mean. So there were a few questions that I had to ask, particularly because I jumped right in on pastry. When you don't know that something's hard, it probably makes it easier. And I used the Purefoy Hotel Cookbook, which was my mother's. It was pre-World War II, and it's probably one of the cookbooks that she learned to cook with. And there were hints in the back, extra household hints. And I read those for pie crust hints. So using the same recipe that my mother always used, and the hints in the back, and actually following the recipe because I was new to this, my very first pie crust came out better than her usual. And she decided it was a fluke until several years later when she realized that my pie crust was better than hers. So she asked, what is your secret? And I told her, well, I just follow the recipe and cut it in like you showed me how. I said, but in the back it says to use ice water. And the recipe itself says to sift twice. And she didn't do either one of those. So she started sifting twice and using ice water, and her pie crust got better. Surprise. I'd had other people, we won't name names, ask, say, your pie crust is the best I've ever had. And I said, well, this is what I do. And, well, you don't need to do those steps. Well, the truth of the matter is, yeah, you do. So sift twice on your pie crust. Use very, very cold shortening and ice water. Touch it as the least amount you can. That's how you do it. So that was, the Purefoy Hotel Cookbook. I used that one for years until a friend from high school, and I got to see him when we went to England, and he had moved there probably in the 70s, and he had gone from being a total jerk to one of the nicest people you'd ever met. And he probably was in high school, but, high school. And he had asked if I'd ever seen a copy, or he said there was a cookbook from an Alabama hotel, and it had hints in the back. And I said, I not only know which one you're talking about, I still have mine. So I took it to him and gave it to him, and he was touched. Actually, I didn't use it anymore because as favorite recipes go, things come and go out of fashion. And I guess, I don't cook trendy, but I'll get upon a recipe of some sort that I'm really wanting to master. Once it was salt rising bread. Side note, don't. It's really hard. Even the Joy of Cooking calls it the diva of bread. It's impossible. Even bakeries don't make it anymore very much. And currently it's bourbon marshmallows, which has so many variations. And the good part of that is nothing is a flop, and I have no trouble getting rid of mistakes. And these ones that work, I'm very popular. So that's about it. I've run out of time. Maybe more on marshmallows later.
This is the Running Jackal saying bye-bye for the favorite recipe edition of your 5 minutes. Bye-bye.